I mean, taking the fairyland out of Queen of Nothing, it would make a fantastic telenovela.
My TikTok post being like, well, I had a normal life, but then my half-sister's dad showed up and murdered my parents and kidnapped all of us. See how it turns out in this book series.
And then my pet snake escaped.
Quack.
Welcome to the Little Duck Book Club with duck number 1,
Ren, and duck number 2,
Anna. And today we actually managed something, which is we read the whole Folk of the Air series from Holly Black, and today we're discussing the last book, The Queen of Nothing, as well as giving a little look back overview of the series or thoughts now that we've read it more than once. For me, it was my second read of the whole series. So far, I only read it once. I think you've read it a couple of times, right?
So I've read I've read Cruel Prince most because I read Cruel Prince when it came out. So I bought it right when it came out, when the hype was big. And then obviously Wicked King came out a year later. So I reread Cruel Prince before Wicked King came out. And then I reread both of them before Queen of Nothing came out. So I've only read Queen of Nothing once.
Okay.
Because also it was not a book where I felt like I needed to read it again.
I mean, it's also whenever you're like, oh, I want to restart reading a series. For me, sometimes my endurance, it just dies off in the middle of the series. So the last books don't really get read again. And I just read the first book, and I'm like, oh. Yeah. So that also plays into it.
It depends. Sometimes it's also just you want to experience certain things with the foreknowledge of what happens later. Yeah. Which obviously gets less and less appealing the more books you read of it, because it's like, well, now all the characters also know all the information I already know. So there's not a lot I mean, for different views you can get on it from having read it once.
Yeah, I mean, by now, for example, with the Edge Chronicles, for me, out of these 15 books or what it is, I know exactly where I want to read something again, so I'm just going to pull that out. But no, you're right. As a little continuation of last time, maybe for a very short 5-minute segment, let's talk about books you've recently read, or any bookish news you found interesting, or just a short little quip of something that people should know.
I mean, this recording is very quickly after the last one we've done. So this one, we're pretty, there wasn't a lot of time in between. And I also had my exams, so I didn't really read anything substantial since then, so I don't actually... I don't actually have anything new that I've read since then.
There was something going on Book Talk that I wanted to talk about, but I think it was old Book Talk news. There was this author who, smaller author, and she had only 5-star reviews on her book, which is great on Goodreads, until a reviewer came along and gave it 4 stars. The review was still positive, I liked it, a bit predictable, blah, blah. And this author went and made a TikTok on that review and said that reviewer fucked her over, destroyed her score. She's literally this, signing, pointing at the score and being like, I don't know my 5-star rating anymore. And of course the book community didn't take that kindly and did some review swarming of the book, and now this author basically destroyed her career because her publisher stopped working with her agent stopped working with her. Book Talk hates her, the book community hates her just because she said she was ungrateful for a 4-star review. And I just thought, wow, things can develop so quickly on social media.
Yeah, it's also on the one hand I do get it, because for indie authors, Goodreads reviews, obviously Amazon owns Goodreads, so the Goodreads score is also the Amazon review score. And if you're an indie author, you need the 5 stars to even be seen at all in any of Amazon's recommendations. So, like, yeah, if somebody lowers your score, that super sucks. But also, listen, if you're an indie author, you kind of need to do marketing, and you should understand how public perception works, and this is just not helpful. Like you're literally shooting yourself in the foot after you're already, like, struggling. Like, why would you do this to yourself? It's so dumb.
I mean, there's a lot of, especially with social media now, there's so many ways in which you can try to promote a book. Obviously, not everything is gonna hit because there's a lot of things like videos going viral for the dumbest reasons ever, and good content will not make it, even though it is fantastic. But I've seen a lot of
people's taste sucks. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of different ways that people have promoted books. Not all books I would want to read, but especially because I think it was a contemporary book, especially for contemporary stuff, I've seen people starting videos as if they were telling like tea or something. They were like, listen. And then they were just talking, and you'd be like, oh my God, where does the story go? And then in the end, the person like holds up a book and is like, you can read it here. And it's like, you
held up Queen of Nothing for this.
Got me. It was the book I had closest to me. Well, you can't read. I mean, taking the fairyland out of Queen of Nothing, it would make a fantastic telenovela.
My TikTok post being like, well, I had a normal life, but then my half-sister's dad showed up and murdered my parents and kidnapped all of us. See how it turns out in this book series.
And then my pet snake escaped. And I had to find him, and I found him at the gutter. Yes. But okay, so there's lots of ways you can promote stuff. And she shot herself in the knee basically in that instance.
I just don't understand. Like, I've heard several stories of there being authors who just kind of like go off on reviewers, and I don't understand it. Like, even if you're mad and like, okay, if you read a bad review and you disagree, that's fair. You're allowed to be mad. If you're like, no, my book is good, what the fuck? Or if people just say objectively wrong things, because some people have such bad reading comprehension.
Yeah.
Like, it's fine. But also, you probably shouldn't complain about it on your public platform that you use to market yourself as a professional.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking as well.
Like, you can just call up a friend. You can record, like, a vlog and never post it. You can, like, you can make a voodoo doll in, like, the likeness of the reviewer if they have, like, their image in a profile picture, and then stab it to death and, like, set it on fire. You can do anything.
Imagine somebody taking a little
publicly.
Imagine somebody taking a little duck, right? And they're like, because you're the more critical one, they write a 1 on it, and then they just go.
They're like, yeah, get fucked. I'm killing you, killing me.
Like, duck number 2 likes dumb shit. She can live, but not duck number 1.
They're like, oh, Anna's so nice and funny, but Ren's a piece of shit.
Duck number 1 has to go through the trenches, which is my transition to Queen of Nothing.
Our trenches.
Maybe let's, because I think in previous episodes we've said that the whole Folk of the Air series is fun and nice and interesting and a good read. And I remember the first time I read it was when I got back into reading, and I think you even recommended it. You were like, read the series, you're gonna have fun. It's like a nice, going into it.
It's entertaining. A lot happens. It's like, there's drama. It's fun.
It doesn't take itself too serious.
Easy language. Yeah, they're short. They're fast paced. Yeah. And
I realized when I reread these books, I forgot a lot that happened in them, and I completely had the length of plot points wrong. And now when reading Queen of Nothing, I had to chuckle to myself because I like also thinking about titles of books. And I'm like, oh, how does the title tie into it? And I know why she called it The Queen of Nothing, but to me it felt like, like nothing. Nothing is really of huge interest in here. Nothing that happens makes me go, oh my god, did she just do, like, all of the twists, I already knew them, but all of the twists and everything, it doesn't strike me as genius or smart as they do in the first book. Like, the first book still holds up very well, and Queen of Nothing is literally that.
Yeah, the first book, I've said this, I think I've said this in the Wicked King review too, but the first one is the most well planned out and most highly edited, I would say, which is why it's the one I think is actually the best of the three. It's the one I would read again. If someone were like, you have to read one of these books again, I'd be like, I'd read the first again, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Even though I've already read it the most, but like, dude, I'm not reading Queen of Nothing again.
I don't know, the first book just has the most, I feel like, raw energy in it, and in Queen of Nothing it feels like, in The Wicked King I feel like that raw energy was still there. It just went a different route, not a bad route necessarily, but different, and in Queen of Nothing it just dropped down to a point where like, okay, come on, just end this, please.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like one thing that's also responsible for this is that, like, compared to the other books, Jude has very little agency. Almost everything important that happens is because other people act, and she's just there, which you don't love for a main character, especially a main character whose, like, main distinguishing trait is, like, being active and actively seeking power and influence. It's like,
I feel like,
shouldn't she be doing stuff?
Yeah, maybe? So maybe let's talk about Jude's character in the book.
Yeah,
because the thing that you said with her, like, not doing much, it feels like she gets bounced around by the story a lot. The only thing that I felt she did, like, genuinely did by herself is in the beginning when she goes to like, earn the money. She's like, all right, I'm gonna do these little fairy quests. Another thing is she tries to get the ghost from the kidnapping prison situation. And maybe three things. The end of the book where she, like, snips off the head. I feel like those are three instances where she actually goes and says, I'm gonna do a thing here. And the ghost thing feels less like she does it out of her own, I have to do it, and she's more like, oh, well, he's here, I can't leave him. That's what it feels like to me.
It's like, well, someone's gotta do it,
I mean, we can't leave him here.
Yeah, it's like, well, he's here, so I guess I'll help him. But, like, the problem, I feel like, especially with those, is that it's just, like, vastly less interesting for her to accidentally end up in Maddox's camp than her purposefully choosing to go undercover in Maddox's camp to sabotage him because she's fucking mad at him. Like,
yeah.
Right? And it's also, like, even though she chooses to take Terran's place during the inquest, it doesn't feel like a choice. Because basically the implication is, well, otherwise Terran dies. And, like, even though Jude is justifiably mad at her, and Terran doesn't even really apologize or really
just rocks up.
Like, she also doesn't really ask, she just assumes that Jude will do it.
I think she knows. She kind of knows that Jude would never not do it.
I still feel like if I'm asking someone to risk their life for me, I feel like I'd grovel a little more. I'd be like, you know what? Maybe this is the moment where I should, at least try to be a bit pathetic so they'll want to help me.
I mean, she's like, I'm pregnant, so then Jude.
Yeah, I know, that was also, that's another thing where I'm like,
Love myself a teen pregnancy.
Yeah, but also, like, just the way she just assumes Jude will do it, like, gives the whole narrative the feel that Jude never really had a choice, because of course she's gonna do it. So it's not even something she actively chooses either. It's also just something that happens to her. She's not in Fairy because she decided she wanted to sneak in and defy Carden's orders and take back power by pretending to be Terran. No, she's just there because otherwise Terran might get murdered.
Yeah.
It's not a choice. It's just
and it
circumstance.
The whole thing makes also these... So while she disguises as Terran, she has these moments with Oriana and with Maddox of her going, oh wow, I will never be able to feel these things again and meet these people like this because they would never act around me this way anymore, right? Because they kind of hate me because I tried to kill them. But considering how she just unlucks into the situation, it feels like she doesn't really do much with that information. She doesn't go, well, this is the last time I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Better get something out of it. But she's like, oh, well, that's just it. And it doesn't hit as much. Like the conversation she has with Maddox at the fireplace, because he thinks she's Terran. And I thought, give us more. Like, Maddox is comparatively pouring his heart out. And since she has to be Terran, she's like, oh yeah, cool.
I think, also a thing that bothers me there is that just during her stay there, she 20 times mentions how if they find out that she's not Terran, they'll kill her or
she's
she'll
in
be
so
in big
much
trouble.
danger.
It's so repetitive. It's said all the time. But then she also several times, both at the inquest, but then especially in Maddox's camp, she's just like, I don't know what Terran would do. And I'm just like, really? Really? You've spent 2 previous books telling me how close you two were, how much you've shared. And even if you've grown apart in the last few months and had severe disagreements, I do not believe you that you cannot imagine what you would do or pretend to other people that you wouldn't know better than those people how Terran would react, that you couldn't produce a believable facsimile of her behavior. I don't believe it.
They've spent so much time with each other. And the thing is,
a first draft. She keeps bringing that thought up because it's sure, it's a powerful thought to have that these people don't love you. The love you're experiencing from Oriana and Maddox at the moment isn't real, and the moment you misstep, they'll kill you or they'll punish you some other way. But the more you say it, the less interesting it becomes. It's it's as if she spent the first book, every chapter, talking about how her mom was murdered. It's at some point you just go, yeah, I get it. He killed your mom. Dead. Can you give us some new information that we haven't heard 20 times? Right? It's
that's true as well. It's just, if we stay at the camp and her behavior there, it feels, even at the camp, she doesn't have a lot of agency. And at first I thought, okay, maybe that's the Terran way of life. She has to act like she's Terran so she can go around and be like, I want to do this, I want to do that. But when she talks to Oriana and Oriana still thinks that she is Terran, she's like, oh, well, there's different options of things you can do. You can this, you can do that. I can give you little options and then tasks you want to do. So she would have the opportunity to walk around and either sleuth a bit more or sleuth away, just leave.
Yeah,
I don't get it. If she's constantly saying, I'm gonna die if they find out, but she doesn't really take much effort to leave.
It's the frustrating part about it is that, it would have been so easy if the narrative didn't treat Terran as a plot device more than anything to make this interesting. Because, Terran has chosen an avenue to gain power that relies on the grace of others, which means her work is done by persuading people and playing them, which, Jude does with Crimson, Like, it's there. Like, that's the frustrating part about this book to me, because a lot of ideas are there where you could work with it, but it feels like such a first draft where it needed genuine, like, deep editing, and then it could have been really good. Because, like, yeah, she plays Grimson. She could have totally, like, charmed some of the guards. She could have, you know, she could have built, like, positive relationships, especially if she'd been there by choice, if she knew she'd be impersonating
if she'd invaded
Taryn,
it, yeah.
There could have been way more agency to her, and also more of a sense of danger, because she'd be actively working towards something, and not just, oh, I'm lucky that Maddox called me into the tent while they have out their maps and battle plans.
Yeah.
Good for me, I guess. I'm gonna look at it. Like, come on. It's just not interesting.
I mean, in terms of the story, it does work that she did, like, she gets kidnapped by Maddox or saved, you know, whatever you want to say. And obviously she couldn't have prepared for that in this instance. But again, like you said, if we twisted it from she goes there on purpose, so she has, like, in the back of her mind, I might get taken to Maddox, it would be a different situation than what it is in the book, which is I'm stumbling into a situation I don't really know anything about, and I'm just winging it.
Like, especially because, like, I know I've mentioned at the end of the last thing that, like, the series would be so much better if both Taryn and Jude were protagonists and got to influence the story. Because Taryn has a huge influence on the story already, but she's not important enough that we actually understand what she's doing, so it's just like, oh yeah, Taryn did something, great. But we don't see it. But, like, even if, like, we scrap that, but just go that Taryn has, like, more information and agency, and if she were like, yeah, there's an inquest into, you know, the death of my husband, and Maddox has given, like, I've gotten information from people associated with Maddox that he's probably gonna try to save me, then Jude could have been like, oh, well, I can go get you off the hook, but then I can also get information on how to ruin Maddox, while also planning to take down Carden, who I'm mad at right now. So, it's just like, it was such an easy fix. Like, if she had known Maddox was probably gonna show up, just because, like, Taryn had gotten the information that he would probably be there, then Jude could have planned to be in that camp and planned to get information. Because, like, obviously in this plot she's like, okay, I'm gonna use this information to buy a pardon for myself. And this could have been her plan, to be like, hey, look, I'm still super useful. Like, even if you're mad at me for sneaking into Fairy, look how fucked you'd be without me. You need to forgive me publicly for giving you all this information. Right? Like,
it would have worked,
then it would be on purpose. Then it wouldn't just be stuff that happens. Like, it's... Yeah.
The frustration is so visible. Yeah, I agree.
So
I totally agree.
Because it's so close. It's so close to being better, but it's not.
I mean, let's continue with the plot of Jude's inaction. So she flees. She tries to save Ghost. Ghost is already gone. She instead meets Maddox, and he's like, well, I already knew, you little rascal, that it was you. At some point, I figured it out. I'm a smart guy. And then they fight, and they have this, like, I think, like, cool, like, interesting situation where Maddox doesn't expect her to falter, and then he actually hurts her, like, stabs her, and he's, like, a bit surprised, actually. He's like, oh fuck, well, I actually managed to do that. And Judah's like, oh shit, well, you actually managed to do that. I like that scene.
I also like the scene because it's basically the perfect mirror to the prologue of the first book. Because he's literally, do not run from me. Yeah. And then, like, and then he stabs her, and then he almost kills her. It's
especially because previously at the fireplace where they talk, or at the open fire, it's not a fireplace. Jude, as Taryn asks him, is that why you killed our mother? And he's like, well, you know, sometimes he can't help his nature.
Like, I didn't mean to. Yeah, it was heavily implied that, like, oh yeah, I'm so used to killing people. It's just like, you know, it's the situation is like, if the only tool you have is a hammer, then every situation looks like a nail, and that's like, well, I have this sword, and that's like, you know,
that's all I do.
I can just stab my problems, and it's like, well, you can, but
So I love that situation. And then her sister saving her felt a little bit like, oh, that's oddly convenient. But considering how it was oddly convenient that Carden and like the Roach tried to save her out of the camp, it didn't feel that out of space. And then we have the scene where she gets healed by the land, and for a minute I was a bit confused because they are in the human world, right? At that point. Are they not?
No, they're not. They're in like just the northern fairy realm where like other fairies
that's live. Why. Because I was, for a moment, I was a bit confused about the geography. Because Oriana says like, we're gonna get back home soon, and I thought, so she meant
Canada right now. It's fine.
I was sitting in with my book, I was like going back and forth, but I couldn't find the sentences. Okay, then that's clear for me. Right, she gets healed, and then they run away with her, and it feels like a weird cop out sort of. Or like, no, she runs away with the horsey and they run somewhere else. And I read this book yesterday and I've already forgot half of it.
She is in a hurry because Maddox implied he's gonna have the ghost kill Carden. So she's like, well, literally no one else in Fairy has been competent ever, so I need to save him, which is stupid.
But she goes to Hollow Hall first, right?
No, she goes to her home first to change her outfit because, you know, she was just stabbed. She's like covered in blood, which is not a great
She has
look.
the stitches, yeah.
Yeah, so she does that, and then she goes to the palace and like through the spy entrance to try to catch a spy and stuff, which.
She hands over the note of like, there's a spy, and then the bomb tries to shoot her because they're suspecting a spy, and she's like, oh, Matt played me all along.
It seems so very not thought through that it's ridiculous. Like, it is very obvious from reading that Holly Black really, really, really wanted the scene where Jude falls from the rafters and Carden is like, that's my wife. She really, really wanted that.
It was nice,
so everything else needed to line up for that to happen. So everything else is kind of stupid.
I mean, also the fact that the bomb does not recognize her. I don't know how far away they're supposed to be, but if it's close enough for Jude with her human eyes to recognize the bomb. And Jude just has her hair covered. She doesn't have anything in front of her face.
Shouldn't the bomb like the ghost?
Shouldn't the bomb be able to see, oh wait, that's Jude? And I mean, maybe the bomb be like, I'm not going to take any chances. I'm going to shoot her anyways. But I don't know.
That feels pretty stupid.
It feels pretty stupid. And then she falls through the ceiling onto the banquet floor, where I thought, shouldn't this girl at some point just die?
I was like, I think even if this doesn't kill her, this certainly ruins her spine. I don't think she can walk after this unless you do some fairy magic shit. And they're like, it's fine. It's just a, 10-meter fall onto solid earth. Like, it's fine.
It's just a flesh wound,
Yeah, it's... And she's just lightly bruised.
And then Carden saunters up to her and he's like, oh no, that's my wife actually. And people are like,
you need to arrest her, she's banished. And he's like, no, that's my wife. And then she faints, which is very funny.
And the amount of times that Jude becomes unconscious in the book, it doesn't happen that much.
It's really funny.
But it happens enough times for me to go,
It's very telling, I think, to her lack of agency. I'll be back, she's like, we need a new scene, so Jude lights out.
It's like in Are You Lost, Baby Girl with her heart condition, where she just faints.
But yeah, also back to the rescue where it was
yeah, sorry.
It felt so ridiculous. Like, why was Carden and why were they even there? They did nothing. Like, they did nothing of effect. Like,
of value. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because like, okay, they were there, and they're like, hey, you need to leave this like tonight, and she was like, yeah, I already planned to do that anyway. She goes to steal the key to save the ghost, and then the roach activates like some sort of
a trap, I think,
anti-thief protection measure that like because of the fuck off magical sword that Maddox has commissioned from Grimson. But like, if the roach weren't there and didn't, like, they don't steal the sword anyway, so it doesn't matter. The roach just gets poisoned while like they're running away, so that Carden has to leave with the roach. But why were they even there then? Like, they add nothing.
Yeah.
The only thing that happens is that Carden gives Jude his cloak, which I'm still mad about, that they made it into a cloak. It was so stupid. Gives her the cloak that's, like, impervious to any damage. So, but, like, it doesn't protect her because, like, okay, it protects her from one swipe from Malak, and then he notices that the cloak is sword proof, and then like he pulls it away and stabs her anyway. So the cloak also functionally has literally no purpose either. So why the fuck were those two guys even there?
I feel
they're not contributing anything.
I totally agree. I feel like it was very smart of Vivi to go to Carden and be like, hey, listen, I know you have some kind of beef with my sister. This is the situation. I think you like her. Help me. I think that was a very smart thing on her part.
She didn't even do that.
Don't. She did contact.
Carden showed up at Vivi's house after Jude got abducted because he was mad that his wife was gone again.
Wasn't it that Vivi got the letter from Oriana and she contacted him?
Yeah, but before that, Carden was already there and found Taryn. And, like, was like, what the fuck is happening? Why is my wife gone again? Is she working with Maddox? I'm really mad about it. Like, they didn't approach Carden thinking he was still really mad. About, like, that he wanted something. Like, he was clearly concerned. So, I feel like this gives them too much credit. I feel like it's okay. Like, it's smart of them to hire Grima Moog, because she's, like, actually someone who can fight, which is useful. But I also, quite frankly, don't understand why Taryn was in the rescue team either. She didn't contribute much of anything either. Like, it was a really, really good thing to have a confrontation between Vivi and Maddox that's like actual open hostility.
Yeah.
That was good. Because they've been on the outs since the beginning, but he didn't take it seriously. So it makes sense that Vivi is there, because she can also make the magical horses. But, like, why is Taryn there? She really added nothing of value.
I agree. I just looked up the scene in the book, and it sounds like we're both right.
Okay.
The roach... The roach says it was your sister Vivian. She came to the High King with a message from your stepmother. So she took that message. And then, like, obviously, due to surprise, she's like, Ruby went to you. And then he said, we spoke after Maddox carried you off from the palace. And whom did I find in her little dwelling? So it was an instant.
Yeah, so
regardless of that, it's still... nothing still makes sense.
I don't understand. I'm like, this whole...
The whole rescue mission is only there so we know that the ghost is still in the game. We have the scene where Maddox stabs her to see that she gets healed by the earth, and to, I guess, introduce...
It's there to show that Carden
in a way. Yeah,
it's there to show that he really, really sucks at ruling, because he's like, no, I need to be in danger personally because that's my wife. Like, it's just kind of embarrassing. Like, especially because it's like, dude, if she never responded to your letters, why didn't you just visit her? Like, if you really... Like, if you were this desperate, Like, right?
Yeah. I feel like their whole thing was not a miscommunication trope. It was a these are teenagers and they're acting like it trope. Because in which world, like, if we took it in the way that Carden thought she's gonna figure it out immediately, and he notices after a couple of days that she doesn't get it immediately, why wouldn't he go to her? Why wouldn't he say, oh, well, you know what? Actually, I love this human.
Yeah.
I want to spend time with her. I'm going to just get her back.
The most offensive thing is that Jude is so stupid. Because she should have figured it out. Literally everyone who isn't, I don't know, 11 years old read the last scene of The Wicked King and was like, oh, he said the crown could pardon her, and she's the queen. Obviously, this means she can pardon herself, right?
Yeah.
And, right, but then in the book, literally, when she's at the inquest, she's like, oh, wait, I'm the queen. Could this mean I could have pardoned myself? And, like, it's been months, or it's been weeks. It's been too long.
A while.
For you to not have even considered this? How fucking dumb are you?
And not even tried. Because the Jude of the first book, she tries everything. She's a teenager, she's scared and like a little bit fucked up, but she tries a lot.
She's angry and driven. Yeah, the problem is also that, like, this is, like, fairy. Like, I understand that it is inconvenient to have to consider how every word spoken by any fairy must be true, but if Carden says she is banished from the land until she is granted forgiveness by the crown, this means she can literally not... This should mean she cannot enter fairy at all. Like, this is how an exile works.
If she's banished,
with fairy language, it means you literally can't go in there. Because it's a binding statement. But, like, I mean, you can always say, oh, Carden already forgave her anyway, so she could come back anyway. Like, but it's, like, clearly it wasn't considered at all.
Yeah.
Which is so infuriating to me. It's like, if you have this tool to make your story interesting, like, it is both, 1, a cool magic system, it is 2, a good constraint for all of your fairy characters to have to be honest, and 3, it's also a really effective way to constrain everyone else by the things that your fairy characters say. Right? Like, and constraints make it interesting because it makes you have to be creative. But she just ignored it. It's what also infuriated me on this front was that Jude has this dream about, like, Carden and Locke and Valerian, and, like, I can't believe Holly Black has the gall to bring up Valerian's curse again, but it isn't actually effective, but it should be.
It should be.
It should
also,
be.
The little tidbit at the end where he's like, well, I died, but I wanted to say this, and it's like, okay, this must happen then.
The part that you didn't say is not effective, but the other parts should have been. I actually, like, one of these could have been such an easy solve where it would have been, your hands will forever be bloodstained, but, like, the cop-out is that just, like, the snake blood is staining and she has forever, like, black hands or whatever. And it's like, okay, her hands are blood-stained forever, but she doesn't actually have to murder people all the time. Like,
I mean, especially because at the end, when it's about the soldiers, she says, well, even the ones who are feeling sorry, they have the stained hands. And it's like...
Girl, this is the third part that infuriated me. First off, the thing for the soldiers was just legitimately brain dead. Like, you have to live over a year without hurting a single living thing. And I'm like, girl, you know microorganisms exist. You know, we know that plants have some sort of pain, like, receptor, like, they notice when they're harmed, and it's clearly the equivalent to our pain response. Like,
they're gonna turn into these people who only eat, like, fallen fruit.
Without this. Even if they're just birds for the time, they will be killing stuff in their digestive tract that they didn't know was even there. This is stupid. And then the second one where it's like, on the one hand, it's like, oh, what a ironic punishment to be like, haha, Maddox, I'm not killing you, but you're also not allowed to touch weapons for the rest of your life. And it's like, A, what is considered a weapon is extremely context dependent. Can he pick up a knife in a kitchen?
This man will not be able to chop his veggies anymore.
Is he allowed to do that until he decides he wants to stab people? Is he not allowed to pick up rocks? Because those can be weapons. And also, even if he doesn't pick up a weapon, he can beat people to death with his hands. He literally doesn't need weapons to keep fighting and murdering people. He's really good at this. This is a stupid stipulation. Like, it's like, this is so stupid. But especially, it's stupid, like, I understand that it's, like, the girl boss moment and, like, oh, she's in charge, so she can make the decisions, but, like, she's not a fairy, so her pronouncements aren't magically binding.
Yeah.
She literally needs Carden to basically be, like, her little repeater. He needs to repeat everything she says, so those punishments are actually...
True.
Yeah, in effect.
Yeah.
It's so stupid. It's so dumb.
But yeah, the whole thing with the riddle. I remember the first time I read the book. At the end of Wicked King, I was like, "Oh my God, no! He banished her. What are we gonna do?" And since I had all the 3 books, I immediately picked it up. And since it's never getting addressed at the very beginning of the book, I thought, well, obviously, her just going back didn't work. So the riddle's solution must be something else.
No.
And then when she even says it while she's at the inquest, it's like, I thought, wait, what?
Wait, you didn't even try?
You didn't
also,
try?
Like, you
and then it's the actual
you can
solution?
walk back into Fairy and the only danger is that people will recognize you? Are you dumb?
And I thought I was gonna get, bamboozled. I was gonna get enlightened with some amazing riddle the first time I read it, because the previous books had these moments where like, oh my God, but this time that didn't happen. And while I'm not the brightest candle on the birthday cake, I still managed to.
You realized
after some time I realized this is. At first I was like, this is probably not it, and then I realized, shit, this is actually it.
Oh, this was it. Oh,
that is the solution.
I also think the reveal scene is kind of funny, where Carden is like, oh, I thought you'd be proud of me because it's such a smart word game. And I'm like, he is right. But then the funniest part of the conversation is where they both, like, confess, kind of. And it's like, I do not believe these people have, like, the emotional intelligence or the vocabulary to express this. I do not believe it. They're like 17. These people don't fucking... They no.
Just the way that Jude does it by the end of the book, where she confesses her undying love and like all the stages of grief and love and emotions she went through, would have hit a bit harder if the beginning of the book, like, if I would understand if, for example, she didn't even try to solve the riddle by herself, saying, I'm gonna unbanish me, if she was too heartbroken, in a sense. If she was like, he wouldn't give me this opportunity to solve it myself because he doesn't love me in that way. And sometimes she quips it in that, oh, he played her, he didn't really love her, but it doesn't feel heartbroken enough for me to the point where she would think she could solve it herself.
Yeah, it's like, I don't believe her that she's heartbroken, because she's not angry about it. Because
she's nothing about it.
Like, she literally, in the first book, which is an extremely, like, it feels like a character statement about her, where she's dancing with Locke, and he's like, if I hurt you, would you forgive me? And she's like, if you hurt me, I'd hurt you back. It's like, that's what I expected from her. And that would also have made the story interesting if she decided, okay, you've banished me from Fairy, I'm not allowed to come back, then I'll take all of these disaffected fairy folk here who don't like you either, and I'm going to make your life worse. Yeah. You wanted me gone, you thought you could punish me, look what I can do while you're not looking, while you think I can't do anything, right? Like, you thought you got one over me. well, I'll get an even bigger one over you. Yeah. If but she was like, okay, not only did you get one over me, but Maddox did as well. I'm not allied with either of you. I'm going to do my own thing, right? Like, that would have been interesting. And obviously she would have then been like, okay, yeah, I was only mad because I actually loved you and I felt betrayed. And, like, then they could work together. But it feels so nothing that she's just, like, sometimes is like, yeah, I'm queen of nothing now because he took it from me. And it's like,
yeah. Okay. It feels like those couple of chapters in Twilight where it's just the names of the months where she's depressed.
Except that one was a good stylistic
but it's written choice out and you have to read it. But we're just sitting there watching Jude be morose and sad, and it's like... we actually have to read it. It's like, couldn't you have pulled Stephanie Meyer like on this one?
The epilogue of the second book was way more effective at conveying this feeling than anything at the beginning of the third, where it's just like, yeah, she's like lying in front of the TV eating
She's
fish
eating
thing,
nuggets
and you
again.
can feel the lethargy and depression, and you can feel it.
Yeah.
But it just feels like, even if you're like, okay, it is actually a realistic response for somebody who's been running on fear and anger their entire life to then just fucking crash and not have any motivation, like, after they feel like they've lost everything they've worked for. Yeah, is it realistic? Sure, but it's also fucking boring and I don't want to read it.
It's not just that it's boring, because it's so, on one hand she still like looks out for Oak, she still wants to train him in the back of her mind. Her plan is still to make him king one day, but on the other hand she's like, well, the only thing I can do is doing these little fairy jobs and getting some money, and I don't know where I'm gonna go with this, but hey, at some point Oak will turn 18 and we can just fuck up the fairyland or something like this.
Where it's also like, Holly Black, none of your fairy characters can lie. If Oak says in the text literally that he will never be king, then you can't have him be king ever in your series.
I don't know, though. Just because he says he will never be king doesn't mean that it's like a prophecy or something.
No, it means he's bound by his word. This is why fairy promises are meaningful, because they'll have to do it. This is also why if you, like, if they can just imbue their gifts with, like, negative consequences if you don't ask about it, but then they're binding because, you know?
Yeah.
Like, they cannot lie, so they are bound to their word. And if he says that, then unfortunately, I know this just means Holly Black didn't really think this through, but it should actually mean that. Because if it's true, then it will always be true, which means he will never be king. Which, honestly, since the Blood Crown is destroyed, why are you even working on making Oak king anyway? He's bad at this. Just find someone who's better at... Like, now you don't need anyone with blood relations anymore. It's not important. Why put this pressure on this kid? Like, why bother?
I mean, he even moves back to the mortal world in the end with Maddox and Oriana. So it's like, he clearly doesn't want this.
Yeah, no, he's obviously disinterested. Like, she's taught him very well what consequences come from being in power, and like an intelligent child, he's like, that sounds like it sucks. I don't want this job.
I don't want this,
I'd rather not. And he's right. It's not great. And since he doesn't have to take it, like...
Yeah, now that you're saying it, it does... She should need, like, a huge chart where she writes down all the definitive things people have said. Because that would make it interesting, because if they're actually bound by their words, then you can have fun wordplay. Of course, it requires more thinking, but it could also make your narrative that much more compelling when people notice that, oh my god, they said this even like a book ago, but it still matters. You know? Or they gave a promise and they can, and they'll have to stay true to it, because, you know. I just thought, imagine being a fairy and you're like obsessing over one certain food and you're like, oh my god, I want to eat this forever. And then after, I don't know, you live very long. After like 2 years, you're starting to get tired of that food and you want to eat something different. But because you at some point 2 years ago said you want to eat this food forever,
I mean,
you have to
that's different, right?
it.
Saying like I want to eat this forever is fine. It's just an intention. But saying I am going to eat this forever, it's different. And I'm pretty sure, like that's why I even remembered was Oak was being like, I will never be king. And not just, I don't want this job, because he says that several times, but he's like, I'm never going to do this. And it's like, well, dude, you can give up right now. Like, that's, like, you're right. But that's a general problem, like, because sometimes she remembers, and sometimes it's relevant to the plot that the fairies can't lie. And those are the interesting parts, but then sometimes she's also like, oh, it's just dialogue. And it's like, no, you can't do that, though.
One thing I absolutely loved in this regard of fairies talking or not talking is when Cardan has been turned into the snake and they meet outside with Maddox and the Court of Teeth, and Judith's like to Oak, she's like, you're gonna do me a great favor. You're just not gonna talk, right?
Yeah.
Oak's like, that's not helpful. She's like, it's very helpful, trust me. Just keep your mouth shut. That was the one where I thought, this is what I expected, especially because she's such a skilled advisor, or puller of strings in the second book. I kind of expected that to continue in the third book, but it's a lot of bumbling around, having these people walk all over her, like all of the advisors. They're just treating her like dirt. And it's like, okay, she's a human queen. That's weird. That's never happened before. But at the same time, are they not scared of their king? Like, Cardan can just go, boop.
But that's also a thing where it's like, the narrative is like, oh, they're married now, which means they're, on even footing. But they literally aren't. Like, nobody treats her as if she has any kind of power in herself. They're all just like, oh yeah, Cardan will be mad if we, murder you, but, that... And, we respect you while Cardan is, giving us the stink eye, but the moment he's out of the room, we don't give a shit.
And that's
so...
In connection to that, there are a lot of scenes where people tell her this is not becoming of a queen. Like, even at some point, Maddox's like, are you fucking serious? Like, a queen doesn't do this. And I feel like if we take the Jude from the first and the second book, and we would keep to her character, she would, in the beginning she'd be like, oh no, oh wait, I gotta do this thing even if it's unqueenly, but at least at the second time she'd be smarter about it and she'd be more assertive of her new power, like she does at that one part where she maneuvers Lady Asha and Lady Nor and stuff. But that's, I feel like, one of the few times where she acts like a queen.
And I feel like this is a part where it feels detrimental for Holly Black to be like, no, we need these twins to be super different to hammer home the message. And it's like, but that somebody who is a spy should understand social interactions and knows what an image of a ruler is supposed, she should know how to maneuver these conversations. And also it's a fun contrast to draw, but they're also literally both trained in combat and strategy. Taryn just didn't like it as much, but she can do it. Which
they're
means
both trained in court etiquette as well.
Be able to do the other thing, maybe not as skilled, and she wouldn't be a good subtle manipulator, but she could still do the social aspects of her job well. It's really annoying where it's like, okay, she's been seneschal for months. She should know exactly what things are expected of a ruler and how to behave. Come on. I don't believe she's this stupid.
And I do not believe it. And it's not just that, oh, she's much different than Taryn is in terms of court behavior and stuff. You can still behave you have the authority, you have the power without being the nice court person. So it's not, this is actually her moment to go, all of you fuckers have to listen to me now because I am the queen. Shut up.
Also, especially because just earlier that evening, Carden introduced her as an extremely successful murderer, which, you know, also you have a very, very well-known cannibal general standing right behind you.
Mm-hmm.
There is no reason why people could choose to not, like, obey you. Like,
even if,
this is so dumb.
And,
like,
it also, the connection that she is Maddox's, like, adoptive daughter.
Yeah.
And that she has managed to outrun him at multiple points, even outwit him.
Yeah.
The fairies should have respect for her anyways, and she should just act like she has it. But especially all of the Lady Asha situations made me go,
it's so dumb.
Oh my god, why? How is this even a conflict right now? We have bigger problems.
Honestly, the entire time I was like, why is she here?
Yeah.
She's adding nothing. It's like, oh, wouldn't it be fun conflict? And it's like, maybe, but actually we have important things to deal with, and nothing Lady Asha does ever has any meaningful impact. She's just kind of like a little annoying in the corner over there. Like, she's not someone with legitimate power. She's just an annoying schemer who's not very successful because neither Carden nor Jude like her very much.
Yeah.
Like, it's not... why is she here? Like, she adds nothing. The scenes with her add really nothing of substance. We could have cut her easily and, like, given more time to characters who matter, like Taryn, for example.
We would have had no loss there, yeah. Taryn was such a weird character in this book, because in the second book she is a plot.
I feel like she wasn't a character. She was there, but like,
yeah,
she's a device more than anything. Has she done much which shows any kind of personality? No, she's just a pregnant girl.
It's so weird because she's like not there in the beginning. I mean, she is physically there in the scenes, right? But she's not really there. She stitches Jude up, and it's like this moment of, oh my god, Taryn does this for me.
Yeah, okay.
But
that's
okay,
cute, but it's also not.
And then we have the scene with her and the ghost. And it's where he like climbs out of the thing, and she knows his full name, and Judah's like, oh my god, Taryn could have like kept that to herself, but she didn't, so obviously she must be loyal to me. And I'm like, I mean, you know your sister better than we do, but might there be a chance that she is telling you his real name for other reasons? Nothing of this gets explored. Taryn just has his name, and the explanation is, well, Locke told her at some point. I mean, which is, Locke isn't that stupid either.
I feel like this is the part where it's like, why aren't we giving Taryn the agency to actually have schemed? If she has his name because she's made an effort for Locke to either be careless around her or to overhear personal conversations he has to get more information, then this could be an interesting, like, thing to work with. Especially since, like, again, we've talked about this in the other one, it makes no sense for why Taryn is chained down to Locke. The moment she's in court, she has all the room to scheme. She's the daughter of an incredibly influential man. She's the sister of the girl who's standing right behind the king. She went to school with the king, who clearly doesn't actively dislike her at the moment.
She's part of the gentry.
She's married to the Master of Revels. She's obviously super important. Any fae worth their salt would be like, hey, are you sure you want to stay in this marriage that you're not happy in? I can give you alternatives. And if she was actively involved in scheming, this would be good and interesting. And then Locke's death would also be more interesting. But the way it is, it's just like, oh yeah, this needed to happen, so we have a reason that Jude has to go to fair. It doesn't feel like an organic development that would happen in this short a time frame. Like,
yeah, I agree.
I can totally see, like, Locke is a shitty partner, and he's eminently stabbable. Like, he makes himself such a good target that after, like, years of marriage, Taryn being fed up and being like, you know what, you've gotta go. That makes sense. It doesn't make sense that it happens, like, a few weeks after their marrice. That's insane.
The whole timeline itself doesn't make much sense if you think about it.
So much is happening.
I feel like, in theory, we should have had a bigger time jump between book 2 and book 3.
Yeah.
For it to really, like, hit in several parts. Yeah. For Maddox to be able to, like, rally all the other folks, for Taryn to, like, develop this disgust for Locke, for Carden and Jude to, like, have a serious break in their relationship, and then to be like, oh, I don't know, how is it going on? But one thing that I expected the first time I read the book, and the second time I read it, I would have loved it so much more, is if we had utilized this connection between Taryn and the Ghost more. In the end of the book, it's alluded that Ghost has a crush on Taryn a lot of times. He looks at her, blah, blah. But it would have made much more sense, for example, if she had used the knowledge that she knows Ghost's real name to have Ghost kill Locke. Be like, you know what? Or Mr. Garrett, go kill the fox guy. And then her hands would have been clean as well. It was in a moment of anger that she did kill Locke, but I feel like it would tie it nicer, like a little bow.
Like, yeah, on the one hand, I can totally respect this choice, and I can see the thematic appeal of it, to be like, oh, she is also Maddox's daughter. Yeah. You know?
She also has to kill it.
She also grew up there. In her anger, she also does this. But I don't think she should have used the Ghost's name to make him do it. I think the most effective thing would have been her allowing the Ghost freedom by using his name to free him from Locke's commands, so that, and then he can kill Locke if he wants to, and he clearly wants to.
Yeah.
And she can be like, I will give you freedom if you solve my marital situation for me. I'm not gonna make you, but it's an offer. I'm making you, like, we can work together. That could have been really interesting.
And then the relationship would have made more sense.
But also, I'm just like, isn't he, like... I feel like he's pretty old. I don't know what they said, but I'm pretty sure he's, like, several decades older than her. I think. But
doesn't he look like a normal young dude?
But he's half Fae. Like, he's Fae, and they all look young.
I mean, come on, we're in book world, right? But I get what you're...
But, like, I'm not saying that it's, like, weird, like, that it would be problematic. I'm saying, why would he be interested? Like,
because she's a human, I guess.
Yeah, she's 17, though. Or she's 18, or whatever. Like, do you know how annoying teenagers are? If you're, like, if you've worked as, like, a spy and you've been used your entire life, do you want to hang out with the teenagers whose biggest problem was that, like, oh yeah, my marriage situation wasn't great because I made a bad choice and now I'm pregnant? Like, is that, like, I feel like this is too short a time frame for this to be, like, a meaningful connection. You know what I mean? Like, I don't see why he would give a shit. Why he would be attracted to her, right? Because, like, other people have done nice things for him. Like, both the Bomb and Jude have been nice to him and have done things without expecting reciprocity. Like, it's not that, like, she's the first to ever show him care. It's like, no. She's also not the only one to not use his given name against him. Because clearly neither Jude nor Carden nor anyone else did it either after they found out. Like,
yeah,
it's just like, why? Like, this is such a... Why does everyone... Like, do we need this relationship? It adds nothing. Like...
It truly didn't add anything of substance except for a couple of lines on the page.
Yeah.
The first time I read the series, I didn't really know what to think about the Bomb and the Roaches relationship, because it was like kind of coming out of nowhere, but okay, I guess.
It's like, I feel like that one's more acceptable because it's built up over at least 2 books, because we already have in the second book, we already have some hints that, like, they're clearly, like, there's some like deep feelings there. Yeah. But I also am annoyed by it because it's the trope of, like, the ugliest, most disgusting looking man you can imagine and, like, a super pretty young girl. And it's like, why didn't we do it the other way around? Like, I'm sorry, but, like, why does it always have to be this?
Yeah,
right?
it's like she's a model and he's there.
He's not even just there. Like, his nose is bent in, like, the wrong direction. Like,
right.
He looks really bad. Yeah, it's like, he's not just there. He's actively non-attractive, which is just like, okay, do we have to do this?
I mean, it depends on what fairies find attractive again, but I get where you're going at.
I mean, clearly for them, it's not about, like, physical attractiveness. Yeah. It's more like, this is from a meta perspective of, like, this is the one, like, this is the thing that always happens. If we have one person in a couple who's not attractive, it's never the woman, right? It's a pet peeve. I think it's annoying. I don't know why we needed to do this.
It's not like a huge part that you would dock points for, but it's still
I honestly
irritating.
I think I would have found it more interesting if, you know, Jude knew that they're both pining and we didn't get a resolution on page, because that felt kind of, like, forced and unnecessary.
I felt like that's a good point. I felt like quite a lot of scenes were a bit of fan service in a way.
Yeah.
Especially, I felt like the end of the book, where they're all sitting there and eating pizza, and we see Carden in normal human clothes. And we see, Heather is still there. Amazing, great.
Oh, Heather.
Heather.
No, that scene was also... Yeah, a lot of this book feels like the plot is so half-baked. Everything that happens is like, okay, there's some reason why it happens and I understand why it needs to happen, but the way the things happen is so obviously not thought through properly. Like, you could have probably have everything happen and have it be a lot better if you just constructed the situations differently.
Yeah.
It's like at the end, or towards the end, like, okay, totally good idea to be like, hey, we're destroying the blood crown and it leads to Carden becoming monstrous. Why it needs to be a snake, I already said this to you, I think it's super uncreative. If it's like a curse where it's like, oh, this poisons the ruler and the entire land and turns him into something, like, horrible, and it's like, snakes are cute. I think so. Like, sure, they're dangerous, but, like, it's just a snake. It's just a fuck-off big snake. Couldn't you have done anything more interesting than just a big snake?
The first thing we can get to the snake in a second. The first thing I thought about when he takes the crown and breaks it is that last scene in Mean Girls where she's on the podium and she's
you
like...
get a piece. I
was like, oh my god, Karen, look at you, sharing the crown. But I agree with the snake. I mean, it's the snake symbolism is on the covers already in the first book, so it's like, okay, yeah, let's have the snake be there. And
there is no snake on the first cover.
Is there no snake on the first cover?
On the twig. There isn't. No, the snake's on the third cover.
Is it only on the third? Which book has the snake on the cover?
Queen of Nothing. The other ones only have the crowns.
Isn't there a snake in the... Oh, wait. No, this isn't... Is it the day the king of Elfheim?
Learn to Hate Stories, or whatever that novella collection is called.
I distinctly remember a cover with, like, the twigs and the snake in it. Am I dumb?
The original Cruel Prince cover doesn't have a snake. It has a beetle sitting on the twigs, and the second one just has like the water, and the third one has the snake.
Then I take back what I said. I kind of... Yeah, I see it now. It's just a beetle. Maybe there's like the Mandela effect. I thought there was a snake there all along.
They're like snakes in trees. I know it. Snakes.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's just like
the big snake. I like the idea of a snake in a burrow because I thought it's kind of cute, but he gets out of there really quick.
I also like that idea, but also for something like magical and monstrous that's poisoning the land. I'm like, this feels a little too unimaginative.
I don't know, is there any fairy lore around snakes? Do you know that?
I mean, there's a lot of lore around snakes because snakes are everywhere, but there's nothing like a big fuck off black snake isn't like meaningful. You know what I mean?
No, I mean maybe it was something that she read in her research and she was like, all right, I'm gonna get a snake in there somewhere. But yeah, I think it might have been easy to chop off the head. She probably liked the aesthetic of a snake.
But like that's also the thing
big
where
snaky
I'm like,
snake.
Is it easy to chop off the head of like a snake that's like 50 meters long? Does a sword even like have the diameter to reach through the entire neck of the... I don't believe it. I think that's not true.
The bone, like... It said that the spears cannot hurt the scales. They just
that was another thing that bothered me. Like,
and it just goes chop.
Yeah, I mean that was because it's what's it called, Nightsbane or whatever, the sword that can cut through anything. Sword. But that's where it's like, why is there so much cameo of the protagonists from her other books? It feels very frustrating to me. It's like, why is Severin, who is not a main character here, contributing a weapon who is used to kill the giant snake, which is a problem from this book series specifically? This should not be happening. Why is there so much focus on like Kay wanting to punch Nicasia for getting like poisoned in the first book? It's so fucking stupid. I don't like... Even if I cared about these characters a lot because I liked their books, they have no place here. This is not their book series. We have enough characters who are original to these series who need attention. We don't need to pay attention to Reuben and Severin and their human girlfriends and Severin and his human boyfriend and his twin sister, and we don't need Kay. We don't need this. Yeah. Why are we solving problems from this book with a weapon from a different book? This is just a Deus Ex Machina. This is not functionally different from being like, oh, we randomly found a solution in the cell, like we randomly found a sword in the cellar. It doesn't work. It's a cop-out. It's a first draft solution.
The thing is, I didn't read those other books. So for me, all these characters are very weird input characters. And sometimes I was like, wait, who was the Severin guy again? I was like,
also, like, why does Reuben get an emotional speech over how much he respects Carden for not forcing people to, like,
that was so weird.
To the crown? Where it's like, oh, do I have opinions on that part? Which is also extremely stupid. But, like, why does Reuben get so much attention? This is not his book series. He should not get this much emotional...
With Reuben, I feel like he's introduced enough in the first book so that I, as somebody who has not read those books, still see him as Reuben a character that exists. Why is
Kay getting so much attention? She's his girlfriend, she's the protagonist of the other books, but she's not important here. Why is Severin so... He doesn't matter. We don't give a shit. Like, in this book series, he's just there. He's not important. It's so fucking dumb. I mean, I'm already kind of like a crossover hater because I think like it's unnecessary. But like here it's like especially annoying because it really is just like, it feels like a cop-out to be like, oh yeah, don't worry, I have this other book series where they have weapons that can deal with this problem. I'm just gonna migrate these people over for a few scenes. It's like,
wouldn't it have been fun if
couldn't you have come up with your own solution?
Wouldn't it have been fun if Jude just got out a gun?
That would have been funny, but I also don't like, I felt like the obvious solution should have been Jude using the power of the land to, like, kill the snake or whatever. And, like, okay, Carden can still survive. Like, she could, like, destroy or, like, stop the snake or whatever. And, like, since then, like, if she assumes sole rulership, then, like, maybe the effects of the Blood Crown, like, stop working and he turns back into a human or whatever. Like, that would have made sense for me, because it's like, well, why is she queen anyway if she barely, like, gets any power from it either? And another thing that pissed me off about, which is connected to this, where, like, we have the prophecy that's like, oh, from the spilled blood a great ruler will rise. Mm-hmm. Why is the ruler Carden? This is not his book series. This should be about Jude. Ooh, why is it Carden?
Wouldn't it have been cool if, like, the snake eats her and she, like, in that last moment, like, goes and then she literally rises out of the blood and then
if she's been drenched in blood by, like, the snake and, like, the poison of it can't affect her because she's, like, the ruler of the land and, like, she's queen and then she's like, okay, I'll marry Carden again because I do love him too. Like, that would have actually been, like, meaningful and impactful if, like, you know, she also chose to trust Carden with this power again. It was not just, oh yeah, we got married that one time. But, like, her promises aren't binding, so their marriage isn't binding, actually. So, like, if she then extended the trust to him and been like, no, I do want to rule with you because I do love you and trust you, that would have been more meaningful. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. Especially because she has this little thought where she goes through the power fantasy of what would happen if she were to put the bridle onto the snake, and also has Maddox under control and the Lord Jaqen, the Jarl,
something,
the Lord
Jarlin,
of the
whatever, I don't know,
the guy, and she's like, I would be a queen that would be feared, I'd be a queen that would be this. You could also connect that scene by her also saying, or I could just fuck them, not do what we agreed upon, and do what everybody else wants to do, which is kill Carden and become the new queen.
Yeah, she could have just been like, you know, I could do this, but it would be cruel to Carden, and that's not who I want to be. It's like, this would be Maddox's choice, but I don't want to be like him. I can choose to be kinder, or I can choose to be fairer, and I can, like, it would also be a good, like, counterpoint to, you know, Maddox murdering people in cold blood or anger, and she's like, no, I'm killing you out of compassion.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's what saves both me and the land. It's like, it redeems me because it's for, not even, like, out of love or whatever, but just because, like, the recognition that, like, cruelty isn't the point that she wants to make.
It's not the solution. But one thing, I mean, she does kill him not because she figured out the riddle, right? She does kill him because she doesn't want to put the
quite
riddle
frankly,
on him.
I don't know why it worked. I don't know.
I feel like she was more like, oh my god!
Him back.
Oh my god, it worked! I totally expected that. That's why I chopped off his head. Like, she didn't do it because she wanted to kill Carden and become next queen.
And then Maddox's like, no, see, your boyfriend's fine, I surrender. Which was also a strange scene.
Why didn't Maddox just kill Carden in that moment?
Also, like, he's mentioned before that he'd rather die than surrender because it's in his blood to fight.
Which is also weird for the end of the book with the like what we already talked about, that he has to go to the mortal world because what was the wording is something like, because he would rather not go to the grave, and that's such a non-Maddox thing to think.
Yeah, I also think it would have, honestly, I think this punishment would have been so much more effective if he tried to kill her or Carden again, and she had incapacitated him without killing him, and it would have been a show of her power. Like, he could have used, like, her powers as a queen and power over the land to, like, stop him and incapacitate him and be like, I'm not like you, I'm not going to kill you because I don't need to. And then, like, him being like, I would rather you fucking kill me, and she's like, I know, fuck you.
Yeah, like, but giving him the choice it doesn't feel like character development. It feels like character.
It feels like a cop-out where it's like, okay, I know the readers like Maddox because he actually, like, because he is a complex father figure, and Oak would be sad if he was gone, and I'm like, would he be sad if Maddox
And I mean,
was
the
gone?
idea of Maddox at the self-checkout is funny, you know, if we think about
funny,
it. But if it doesn't make for a good story.
If he really would rather be dead than at the self-checkout. Like, no shade, but that would be much funnier.
Yeah, that's the... Or if Jude have told him, look, you can't commit suicide, sorry, buddy, but I'm gonna banish you to the human world, that would also been...
Yeah, because
then he would maybe have tried people to kill him, you know? He'd walk into the store.
Because, like, we also know that, like, Fae, like, there are things they don't choose if they're not high Fae. Like, they just have drives to do certain things, and it's not really a choice not to do them. Like, Grima Moga is also like, no, I need to kill things. I can't stop killing things. It's what I do. It's so, like, if I stop killing things, I might as well kill myself. Like, she doesn't need to be a cannibal, but she, like, it's very heavily implied. The same about Maddox in the previous books, that, like, no, he is a killer. He is like, fighting is what he does. It's, like, what his life is about. It's, like, if you're trying to, you know, train your cat into not trying to kill things for fun, it's like, that's just what they, like, these are their instincts. That's what they are like.
Or like a hunting dog to not have hunting instincts and run off to something. Yeah, it's like
trying to keep your golden retriever from jumping into the water. It's like, no, he loves it. He loves being wet. I don't know what to tell you. He loves it.
Just let the little guy go. Yeah.
Yeah, the ending... It feels cheap. It feels unearned, and it feels like she just wanted to be done and didn't want to think about it. She was like, killing Maddox would be too much, but also, so I guess we'll put him to the human realm and, like, trying to figure out how the banishment... He'll just accept it, whatever. He'll just be like, okay, it's fine.
The ending in itself felt a bit cheap, also regarding Cardin's and Jude's relationship.
Yeah.
And the conversation that we mentioned before, I love you, oh my god, you're true, you lied to me before, no, I really love you, okay, thank you, I guess.
Yeah,
and
also...
then they love each other.
Like, I mean, I'm already not particularly interested in sex scenes, but, like, the scene where Jude is, like, trying to fulfill his fantasies or whatever and being like, okay, yeah, but what like, do you dream about? Yeah. I was like, this is the most embarrassing dumb shit I've ever read. Like,
and then
I guess this is what teenagers might do, but also I don't want to have to read this.
But that's one thing, and I mean, it did show that Cardin genuinely wants Jude to do what she wants. Like, she's like, tell me what you want to do, and he's like, well, I want you to do what you want to do. Like, we're at an impasse here because I don't know what to say, but it did feel a bit cringy. I don't know. I appreciate that it didn't go further.
That, like, again, it's like, yeah, is it good when people have open conversations about what they want in their sex life? Yeah. Do I believe these fucking dinguses are going to have an open, clear conversation about what it is they want in their bedroom? No. Not now. Maybe if they're in, like, 10 years when they're, like, adults. But
I wouldn't say Cardin got hit with the book boyfriend curse, but
no.
It definitely felt at some point that his character was dampened a bit, because he's this cruel prince in the first book, you know, and he becomes the wicked king, and then in the third book he's the boyfriend. He doesn't feel... He's
just a poor little meow meow by the end.
But he's not even a fun meow meow. Well, the quip about him, like, being tasty, I like that. But the
thing about, like, the third book also is, like, the fucking prologue. Like, the prologues of both book 1 and 2 are really, really good. They're super effective. The prologue of book 3 is pointless. Like, there's no reason why we need to learn about the prophecy at the beginning of book 3, and every information we get about, like, Cardin's childhood, it's like, we already know it sucked. We know his mother didn't love him or take proper care of him. We know he ended up with Baelkin, and Baelkin was shit. We know his father didn't like him. I don't understand why no one in the second book, after Jude crowned Cardan, approached her and was like, especially that Maddox was like, hey, you know there's a fucking prophecy about how he'll fucking destroy the whole country and, like, fuck up everything? Like, I understand that he wanted power, but maybe, you know, we should prevent... Like, I don't understand how this didn't come up after he was crowned, and people were like, man, he's, like, kind of as a king. Like, he's not horrible, but also, like...
He's not... He's, like, a party king. You know, he's having fun.
Yeah, it's just, like, I don't understand how that didn't come up in the second book. It was like, why is the prophecy coming up in the prologue of the third book?
And why did none of the advisors come up with it sooner?
Yeah, why didn't the astrologer approach, like, Jude and be like, hey, just so you know,
we have a problem.
This is what they say about him.
Yeah.
I don't know what he promised you, but maybe Maddox wanting to put his adoptive son on the throne actually has a point. Maybe Cardan's not the right choice here, but no, we don't get that. We get it, like, shoehorned at the beginning of the third book, where it's like, we don't, like, I don't know, the prologue also feels like it's like, oh, look how sad Cardan's childhood is.
Yeah.
Don't you feel bad for him? Look, he's just a softie on the inside. He's just a little mean because he's traumatized. And it's like, well, that just makes him less interesting. Like,
yeah,
you know, being like, oh, he's like a traumatized child that's just lashing out. And it's like, okay, cool. So he's boring. Like, he's just like every other boy who's a traumatized child. The fact that he's a prince and, like, a fae doesn't really influence his character much. He's just a kid whose parents didn't love him. He's a neglected child, which sucks for him. But, like, it makes him so uninteresting when like, his princedom should be relevant, and the fact that he's a fae should be relevant. But, like, unlike Maddox or Locke or even the Court of Teeth, he's just some guy. He could just as well be a human boyfriend.
But that's parents. That's exactly what I meant with he just got demoted to boyfriend, because this he's a traumatized child. We see it with Vivi. She's still very distinctively fae, right? We see it in her disregard for other people's emotions. We see it in her disregard to Heather, to just the fears and the worries that Jude has. She doesn't take human
problems seriously because they're just not problems to her.
For Cardan, it just all goes out the window. We don't have that anymore. And we should still have that, because he doesn't just like not be fae anymore.
Quite frankly, this was also why I said, I think maybe in the first book or something in our review, where I was like, I think the romance is detrimental because it makes them less interesting characters. Because the fact that they need to work in a romantic sense and be like a socially acceptable couple at the end to, like, most readers, because it's young adult and you can't have, like,
you can't have a hate romance.
It's like, it makes them less interesting. Like, if they could be friends, then they could both still be horrible people who have a weird codependency going on, but they could have more issues, which would make them more distinct and interesting. And that's also why the first book is my favorite, because they're both still distinct characters. Like, Jude stands out a lot from other YA protagonists because she's like that.
Cardan feels like such a interesting and he feels like an interesting not villain, but like he's an anti-hero. Feels like a antagonist that with an interesting plot. We're like, okay, I'm excited to see how we're gonna incorporate this into him genuinely helping, but just erasing all of the malevolence basically and all of the fairy disregard to turn him into a guy with a tail, that just doesn't work out in the way that's beneficial for the story. And it doesn't help at all that Jude also gets like dumbed down, because if Jude still was her rambunctious self, then it would have been fun to see that transition of her going, oh my god, like, why is this guy like this? Come on, where's the fire? Where's the Cardin who tried to nearly drown me in the lake? I mean, he didn't want to, but again, where is he? That would have been maybe interesting as well.
Especially, like, they both get way more passive and uninteresting, where it's like, no, you could still be, like, horrible for other people. Like, you know, Cardin could still be, like, a manipulative, like, vindictive shit to people at court who piss him off. It could just be towards acceptable targets now, where it's like, okay, you can be like this to people who cause actual harm, where it's appropriate, but not to random people. Where it's like, no, he's just...
Or not to people that Jude likes, because now Jude is in his camp, and obviously her friends are his friends now.
Yeah. It's just kind of, disappointing.
But, yeah, maybe let's... Wait, are there parts we didn't talk about yet? Thinking about.
I was like, wait, we can't wrap up yet.
No.
I think something... Yeah, what I wanted to also talk about. The part with the crown, where they're like, oh, you shouldn't force people to swear to a crown.
Yes.
They should swear allegiance to a ruler. And it's like, well... Let's be real here. You're still planning to use oak after this, so you still believe in a hereditary monarchy. So it doesn't really matter at this point who you swear to then, because obviously it's the same. Like, we're still keeping with the bloodline. 2, the people swearing to you right now don't do this because they like you. This is not a free choice. This is still as coercive as when they swore to the crown, because their choices, either they swear to you or they're your enemy, and you've just, like, shown that you have insane power granted to you by the land through being king here. Like, literally, they don't really have a safe choice to say no, which means it's not a choice.
Yeah.
And 3rd, consent of the governed is an important political idea if you live in a democracy and if you're a human and you're like, you know what, people shouldn't be forced to do shit. But if you're trying to implement that in fairyland, if you have rulers of fiefdoms swear to a king, no one in those areas gets to choose either. This is not consent of the governed to any extent. And also... You live in a world where a bunch of people have magical powers and love eating and killing other people, and the only way to keep them in line is through threat of violence or literal violence. You can't work with consent or love of people who swear to you. This isn't how it works. This is all stupid.
I mean, just... Okay, they look at humans like some sort of pet, but... wanting to appeal to people who regularly, manipulate, bewitch, whatever. Another, if you want to call it species, into just being mindless little slaves. It is a bit weird. And also the plot of or not the plot, but Meta going, I have earned the trust of my soldiers. You have not. It's like, well, duh, you're a
Did you, though?
general.
I think a lot of them were just scared of you, and they're career soldiers, and they're like, oh,
well,
we're
maybe
sworn
that's
to
also
you now.
enough.
A lot of, this is a cute idea, I guess, but it's also, like, fairyland, unfortunately, doesn't work the same way. Like, if you live in a society that that has people who have ultimately almost no moral compunctions and have very little reason to work together unless you force them, whose daily life consists of them trying to one-up each other and try to trick each other into bargains because that's just how it works for them. You can't try to work with ideas of, like, just government there.
Yeah.
It just doesn't apply. And also, the thing they're like, the way Carden applies it, also just stupid. Again, these people aren't swearing to you because they like you or like how you govern. They're doing it because they know if they don't, they're on your bad side, and that side looks pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, it's not...
There's not a lot of options for them to... It's like going to vote for a party and the ballot says yes and yes. It's like, okay, all right.
It's not... Like, it's also just like the idea that these people would ally with you because they love you is stupid. This is like saying, oh yeah, all the countries in the EU are in the EU because they love each other and they're friends. It's like, no, these are mutually beneficial relationships politically and economically. This is not, like, you are doing politics. This is not about feelings. This is about power and convenience and resource. This is not, no one's swearing to you their loyalty that they can never go back on. Because they're fairies, if they swear, they have to stand by that forever, even if you start being a cunt later. This is not a free choice, and this is not a meaningful change to what came before. This is dumb. I hate it.
The whole thing feels like a fairy tale, sort of. The whole last third of the book feels like fairy tale territory. And the thing is, isn't it something that is explicitly said in the first book that Elfheim or Fairyland is not fairy tale territory? That it's like, not like in the fairy tales, that it's more like the gruesome German stories that you tell your children before they go to bed, you know, like they get their thumbs cut off and stuff.
It's like, also it's just like, I think it's especially like kind of frustrating to be like, oh yeah, this is like a fairy tale, and like Heather's in the library looking through old fairy tales and coming out with like old fairy, where it's like, okay, yeah, but that's not how it works.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, there are kind fairies. There are fairies who will help you if you help them. But it's not the case that things just work out well. Mm-hmm. There are no happy endings, really, because if it's happy, it's not the end yet, right? It's like, it's still, like, Holly Black tried to build a place that still feels realistic in the sense that, like, yeah, shit just happens and it's violent and it's not great most of the time. Mm-hmm. And, like, if you're in power, that has a price, and, like, you've just gotta live with that. But, like, now the third book is just like, oh yeah, he turned into a snake, but it's fine if you kill the snake. He's gonna be okay. Nothing bad happens. It's like...
It's just so many convenient things happen in the third book. It's also, to get back to the timeline thing and maybe the pacing of the book, similarly to the second book where I thought she was gonna be underwater for all the time, I thought she was gonna be in the human land for much longer, and I also thought Carden was gonna be a snake for like half the book or something, and I was surprised at how different the ratios actually are in the book, and also a bit disgruntled at the rest of it, because I think I would have found it quite funny if Carden was a snake for half of the book. Give us more snake Carden. Give us more impact of him poisoning the land actually also impacts the fairies.
On the one hand, maybe, but the part where he is a snake is so fucking boring. Because everything that make happens is people having conversations that are like technically relevant to the plot, but they don't feel that important or suspenseful. Like, it's like, it just feels... I also don't understand why Holly Black was like, oh yeah, he's gonna break the Blood Crown, but afterwards Jude and Carden are still like, oh yeah, Oak's gonna be king afterwards. And it's like, but why? Why bother breaking the crown then?
I don't know, maybe it was in the moment of like, oh, this is what Maddox and the rest of them all want, so I'm just gonna break it.
Yeah, they all want the crown, so we're just gonna destroy it, but it's like...
I feel like that was the thought going through their head, or through Carden's head, because it wasn't something that he had conspired to Jude with. He was just like, you know what, I'm gonna be a funky little guy, I'm gonna break it. But yeah, it's the pacing I feel was super weird. Because it didn't help the plot at all. I feel like some of these parts that were bothering us could have been less strenuous if they had been shorter, or if Holly Black would have taken more time in that plot and put in like meaningful scenes in there that would make it more of a rounder thing. Except
I honestly find the Maddox Carden confrontation also super weird. Like, Maddox's plan seems half-assed. Carden's response seems very random. Like, it feels like Holly Black just was like, oh, I need them to have some sort of confrontation. And it's just all, like, first draft shit. I don't know.
It does feel very unfinished.
Every part of it, for every scene, I'm like, oh, okay, I understand how this is, like, necessary to set these things up for later, or to have this conversation to, you know what's going on. But still, a lot of it just feels like, why are we here? Like, a lot of it feels so pointless and irrelevant, even though technically it is important to understand what's going on. But nothing feels like it has an important impact.
Yeah, I agree. I love the characters. I genuinely like them because of the first book and also the second book to some extent. I am still a Maddox fangirl. I know that you have converted. You have jumped over to the Grima Morg fan club.
I mean, I still like Maddox, but I love me terrible women. I love women who are the worst. Grima Morg is like, I stan. I have no choice but to stan. She's so funny. Every scene with her is fun. She's so quirky, you know. She's just like, she's committed to her bit, and I love like how everyone reacts. It's just fun. Like the part where she brings like Jude's soup after she got injured, and Jude's like, oh,
like,
do I want to know what's in here?
It, girl.
And Grandma's like, oh, don't worry, not everything I eat is like, I can also cook other stuff. And it's like, she's just like, you know, a fun side character.
Yeah.
She's not super important, and it's like, I also feel like she's a little bit wasted, because I feel like her and Jude bonding in the human world could have been so interesting if Jude had like actively sought power, and having the support of Grima Morg, one of the most like powerful generals, where everyone's like, oh fuck, that's Grima Morg, like
one of the most notorious generals as well.
She's like someone Maddox respects and like doesn't really want to fight because he doesn't know if he can win. Dude, that could have been so good. She could have had like a general she's on equal footing with. She could have had a sparring partner who like respects her and who's not her dad, you know. She could like, it could have been so interesting where she could have been like, okay, yeah, I'm queen and this is my general, and like Taryn could have been her advisor because she's good at court stuff, and that's how they could have like build up a better relationship. It like, I just wish there was more more agency from Jude. I wish Jude had made choices that matter and that influence the story. But I
wish the whole book didn't just happen in a sense. Like, it just things just happen. Either Jude happens to do something for once, or things happen to Jude, or somebody else does something that's like, oh my god, gotta react to that. And it's I understand that not every idea can be incredibly polished, and not every idea can be incredibly smart, and sometimes you do need to do dumb stuff in your story for other things to work.
Yeah, sometimes plot convenience is necessary because you don't have infinite time to work on this. It's fine.
Yeah, sometimes it's also, it would be too convoluted to figure something out. You'd have to change too many other things.
Yeah, it's like sometimes it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not I don't know the English word. I'm not a krümelkacker like that.
You know, you're not nitpicking, you know? You're not,
So, but considering that this book isn't the case of, oh, just don't nitpick too much, because if you don't nitpick at all, then you would have to read it without not without a brain, because those are other kind of books that you read without a brain. But you would have to read it without...
If you read this without a brain, you keep forgetting who's who.
But if you were to read you have to read it without ambition, I would say. Yeah. Without any, like, oh my god, yes, let's take these epic characters from these previous 2 books that we've built up, introduce some more epic characters that are gonna, like, bomb us away, and then just gotta retreat silently. Eat pizza at the end, and it's fine.
Yeah. It's, yeah. I guess, do you, like... We could either... I think, I was about to say we could talk about how we would fix this one, but I feel like it makes more sense to talk about, like, a general series retrospective and then talk about what we would overall change. Because I feel like the 3rd book is, one, a product of the flaws of the previous ones, but it also has a bunch of its own flaws, which is...
Yeah.
I feel like this book... Like, I've said this about other books too, but this genuinely feels like it should have received way more editing. I don't know if Holly Black was on a time crunch, if she didn't have time, or if the publisher was like, we don't care that much, like, we don't want to invest more time in publishing to polish this. It will sell anyway. It's the 3rd book, and if people don't like it, well, there's not another book in the series coming out, so they won't care that much, you know? I don't know why it's like this. I don't know if it's anyone specific's fault, but it reads, maybe not quite a first draft, but a lot of it is like the first solution to a problem. You're like, yeah, the bones of the story are there, but it required some real developmental editing to make it good. Because as it is, it's not good.
Yeah, but I think that's the thing. At some point, once you go into the copy stage of a book during editing, you don't change much about the plot or anything. So it could be that due to time crunch, she had to hand it in. They greenlit it and said it's at the copy stage now, and she wasn't able to change anything past that because it's you just don't do it.
General. I mean, I don't know what happened. It feels like something must have happened. Because, like, I've read other stuff from her. She can do better, so I don't know why it had to be like this.
You also can't say that she got bored of the universe because she has written 2 more books in this universe after Queen of Nothing.
Writing for it. Like, she loves her fairies, like, which I guess I can respect.
And she loves these fairies specifically. It's not just going on to another fairy realm trilogy. She is continuing with characters that exist in here. So
that's true.
But let's do the retrospective thinking about the series.
Your rating. We haven't done.
My rating for Queen of Nothing. I always forget the rating I give the other books. But since I only give truly terrible books a 2 out of 5, I would say Queen of Nothing gets a 3 from my side.
Interesting.
Because I didn't have it in my memory as a bad book. And right now, I also wouldn't say like, oh my god, don't read it. Because I feel like you should read it. If you read the first 2 books, you should read Queen of Nothing to, get it sealed away and stuff. But I couldn't give it more than that. Maybe a 2.5 if I'm feeling very villainous. But
I think 3 is average, and this is good enough to be average. Like, it's just not. It has the structure sucks. I feel like the characterization is not that good. I feel like a lot of it is so half-assed, and like this, it does not deserve more than 2 stars. Like, it's like I gave the other ones like 3.5 and 3 stars. They're average. They're like fun reads, but they're not like. They're like good enough, but they're not like super good. They're fine, but this one isn't fine anymore. It doesn't scrape above the 3, and it doesn't.
To be honest, I would need a chart kind of where I tick off my single little quips to keep my reviews straight. But then again, my aspect of did I feel joy when reading this also heavily skews the rating. So I don't think a chart would help me. I do understand the 2-star review from your side, totally. I think
after the first read, I would have given it 3 stars, but reading it again and being like way more aware of the flaws, it's like this isn't good enough to be a 3 star.
Yeah. But I would definitely say that there is a huge decline in from the first to the third book, and I'd say it's not a linear thing. I'd say the decline from 1 to 2 is less than from 2 to 3. But it is there, and it's not uncommon with series for the first book to be really fun and exciting, and then for the second book to kind of, not be as good as the first one, because it's a middle book, right? You have to start things, you also have to end things, and you have to continue them, set them up. But then for the third book to tank this massively is not uncommon, but definitely not nice.
I feel like it's more common to have second book syndrome, where the second act is just a lot more boring than the other ones. I've also read other series where I felt like the third one was definitely the weakest. I feel like in the Grisha trilogy especially, the third one is significantly weaker than the other ones. I actually think that one is unusual, because I think the second one is the best out of the 3. But I think it's a lot more common that the second one is kind of more underwhelming and the third one is a little bit better again. But writing endings is harder than writing beginnings, which is why there's just a lot more good first books than there's a lot than good third books.
Yeah. Or endings of series in general. Yeah. But I would, in terms of what I liked about the series, was the non-focus on romance as the main point. Especially when I got back into reading, it was nice to read a book where it's not all about the kisses and the smooches and the, oh my god, I love him so much. That was interesting. I love the fairy world in itself, the idea, the whimsy of the fairy world, the toads and the ragwort ponies and stuff. I think it's really cool to incorporate that into a book. So and Jude as a character in the first book, obviously I love her. She's a mess. She's a teenage mess, but she's a relatable teenage mess in the way that she's not batshit crazy, but she is unhinged because she's a teenager, and I like how that unfolds in the first book, definitely.
Yeah.
So what are your pros for the series?
Generally, I do think they're very readable. I also will say that for an extremely popular book series, these are surprisingly good. Because a lot of things that are extremely popular are significantly worse than this. As I said, these are the third one is a 3.5, the second one's a 3, the third one's a 2 for me. So, they're good. They're not great, but they're good enough. And especially, if you've had a reading slump, these are fast to read, it's easy language, they're fun, they are engaging, especially the first 2. And I do appreciate that Jude just kind of sucks as a person. She's a huge asshole, she's deeply traumatized, and as a result behaves accordingly, and I appreciate that. There are a lot of, especially YA romance fantasy protagonists who are oh, I'm not like other girls, but in a deeply uninteresting way, while Jude has, I think, been built up as an interesting character, especially also because Holly Black set up an incredibly interesting family dynamic, which I think definitely is a much more interesting part than the romance. But I also know that clearly the romance must be a selling point for a lot of people, because first off, that's most of what the fans talk about, and two, because I've seen a lot of people say that Wicked King is their favorite from the series and it's the best part of it because of the relationship building aspects of it. So I guess if you're into that, that's also good.
I feel like there's also, concerning the romance part, since Cruel Prince was, I'd say, advertised wrongly in a lot of book spaces as a romance first, fantasy second book, and this big enemy to lovers thing. And it isn't that, it's actually the other way around. Either people would immediately like put it immediately aside and were like, this is not as spicy or interesting or romance heavy as I liked it to be. But for those others who didn't put them away, that bit of romance was a very important part of it still, because it was such a huge part of the marketing, even if the marketing kind of, you know, went a bit wrong at some point.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would generally recommend it if you like YA fantasy. If you're someone who's who generally is put off by the YA fantasy trope and vibe, then
you shouldn't read it.
Is obviously not for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it is. They're entertaining enough. They're nice. If you want to read about fairies from an author who clearly actually cares about fairy lore, then I would recommend Holly Black. She's been doing it since before it was cool. She's clearly interested. I think that is important. Looking at Sarah J. Maas, who has no fucking clue and skims Wikipedia pages and that's...
Let's not talk about how she mixes up her lore in Crescent City.
We have talked about... We have talked about it before.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I would generally recommend them. I mean, I did recommend them to you, so.
I know, and I am grateful for that I got to read them. That being said, let's go.
Let's do
I think
a retrospective.
My biggest gripe with stories that are about family at heart, or that have where a huge component is family, is when sibling relationships get tossed aside at some point. It's one of my most hated things in any kind of media, whether it be a movie or a book or a video game. Video games love to do this as well, especially if you give us twins. I feel like twins are such a fascination in general, especially identical twins. It's like, oh my god, they look the same. And you have all of this interaction with Taryn and Jude, and in the first book especially, you notice that they do like each other and that they care for each other. Jude wants to keep Taryn safe, Taryn tries the same in her own way, and to not carry on with that energy throughout the rest of the books is such a huge letdown, in my opinion, because if that had been one thing that would have been kept up for book 2 and book 3, everything concerning Taryn would already be 10 times better than it is right now. I feel like that's genuinely my biggest issue with the whole trilogy, the way that the relationship and Taryn and Jude get handled.
Yeah, I also think that is my biggest gripe, not just because they're, siblings. Because I feel like it's sometimes fine. Not all siblings are particularly close. It's like sometimes
that's true.
Like just being related doesn't mean you have to have any kind of meaningful relationship. But the book spent a lot of time telling us how close they used to be and how much they used to do together. And especially in the first book, we get some really interesting glimpses into how it feels to live in an abusive household with a sibling who is both very similar to you but also different, and to get played off each other, and how it affects you. There's this one part where Taryn is like, sometimes I hate you for being there so I can't pretend none of it happened.
Yeah.
Which I think is very powerful. It's like, it's an interesting thing to do with siblings. And especially since the book series tries to repeatedly contrast Jude and Taryn in their pursuits of power and safety, I think it is an incredible waste that this is not a 2 POV, 2 protagonist series. Because I also think it would have been fascinating to play Locke and Cardan more off each other, because they are already in many ways a sort of distorted mirror for each other in a narrative sense, and even in like their origins, because they are both, you know, they're both sons of courtesans of Eldred. They've both grown up without real parenting, where Locke has been alone in this giant house. Cardan has been at court, but
not really supervised.
They have a lot in common, but they're ultimately very different people, which is also interesting. Like, if you already have these twins, and you already have like contrasting love interests, it could be, you could so easily play this to show not just like, okay, yeah, Jude and Taryn contrast in what they are looking for, because Jude is looking for raw power and Taryn is looking for safety through having somebody shield her with power. And then you could also contrast how Locke is looking for partner as entertainment, while he doesn't care that much about a person, and Cardan is looking for a partner specifically, and the entertainment is secondary.
Yeah.
But also that like Locke is willing to just take what he wants and Cardan can't, because he's too scared of it. And that's like, you could easily like, and as a plot progression you could show the development of like why it matters that your partner cares for you and not just what you represent, which could end with Taryn offing Locke still. And like, you know, which could be a good moment for her, where she's like, because like this, it kind of falls off, like it's not that important, but it's like she's lived her entire life being basically a plaything and pet for the man who murdered her mother. She's lived in an abusive environment where she's had to play a role and make nice in order to be safe her entire life, and then she's stuck at this in her marriage again, but this time she has the like power to leave, which would be interesting if she actually made an effort to make like court connections and build power, and if she like chose to ally with the ghost against Locke and stuff. And I also think if we had this, we could have had Jude and Taryn at the beginning, you know, they're twins, they like care for each other, but then because of Locke, and we could still keep this, they have a falling out, especially because Jude seems to have acquired power much quicker than Taryn. And like that puts a distance between them. And then in the second one they could kind of work against each other, mostly because Taryn is still with Maddox, but is also slowly building her own power away from it. And then in the third one it could be so cool if they could, you know, work together, if we ended the third one by Cardan betraying Jude, and then in either the chapter before or right behind it we have Taryn killing Locke on screen, because we have both perspectives. This could be a strong ending, and then we start the next book with them together in the mortal realm, conspiring, and
like
we
together
have
again.
Jude pretending to be Taryn in Maddox's camp, and Taryn pretending to be Jude in Cardan's camp.
That would be cool.
But also we have Maddox not recognizing until it is very late, and Cardan immediately recognizing because he cares, you know?
Yeah, he knows.
And then like Cardan working with Taryn actively, and then Jude and Taryn working together, and her being like Jude's advisor for like presenting herself in court, and like how dressing and stuff. Like this could be so good.
What you just laid out sounds like a feast to gorge on, and it is so sad. That's why I was like, I had little quips, but I was like, no, I'm not gonna interrupt, because it's so nice. Yeah, I agree with everything. I think especially seeing Taryn do more and not just have it this, oh, we're being told what she does. Especially the behavior in court. It's been said so many times by Jude that Taryn is so much better than at this, and she is so much versed. But you see nothing of it. Even if we have court interactions, she just stands on the sidelines, either next to Locke or after he's dead. She stands there with Oak or with Vivi, or maybe she's holding hands for Heather. But we don't see her actively interacting with the court, so she just seems as an incompetent person stand-in. So definitely there would need to be a change there. I mean, the second thing that next to the whole family relations, because I would say keep everything between Jude and Maddox and the whole dynamic.
Oh, that's
so amazing. Good. Do not change a thing about that.
But also I feel like it would be so cool if we had like a Terran perspective and had like Terrence, Maddox, the Oriana. It would be so good if she also had like a complex relationship with Oriana, who's like both the guide but also who's like obviously going to tell Maddox any secret that Terran has.
I feel like Oriana is like a walking omen to Terran. Yeah. She's constantly saying, look, I'm still alive, I made it out, but I made it out with a lot of sacrifices, and just be cautious. Everything I'm telling you, do not try this at home, kind of. And also with the wink of, in every couple of sentences, she's like, and remember, don't act against Maddox, don't do this, don't do that. Because Oriana knows that she has to attach herself to someone, and in this case, it's Maddox. But I agree, having that second mentorship, you have like Maddox and Jude and Oriana and Terran would be very interesting. And I feel like that's maybe also why Vivi as a sibling just completely falls through the roster, because she just doesn't have anybody. She just vibes. She's gay, okay, and she exists as a character in a vacuum.
That's also a thing. I think Vivi is kind of wasted a little bit because I think her opposition to Maddox could be really interesting, because like on the one hand she should be safe for Terran and Jude because A, she doesn't like Maddox, and B, she is their sister. But she is also not safe because she's Fae and she doesn't care. The problem, like, it's like Vivi is like important to them and she cares, but she doesn't care enough. I feel like Vivi could be such a good foil for Maddox in the way that, like, even though she tries not to be like him, she is like him. Because, like, her and Heather is just, like, such a deeply unhealthy relationship, and it sucks so much for Heather. I don't understand why Holly Black was like, no, we should bring Heather back and they can get back together. I was like, no, Heather should have run from Vivi and been like, I don't want to ever see you again, and that should have been it.
That should have been the end of it,
been it. Yeah. And then Terran should have wrestled with the idea that actually maybe she is more like Maddox than she thought, because someone she loved ran away from her because of what she's done, because she's unsafe.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. That would be something to change as well. The whole Vivi situation. I feel like, especially for example is it the first chapter even in the third book, where Jude has this little conflict with Oak, and with him, like, you know, sneaking up to the children, and then him saying that he never will be king.
Yeah.
And Jude telling that to Vivi, and Vivi goes, oh, you know, thought like a real problem was happening. And she's not saying it to be funny. She's not saying it because she's quirky. She's saying it because she generally believes that Oak saying this is not that big of a deal.
I think that shows also... Yeah, it's such a good contrast because, like, unlike Terran and Jude, she doesn't have to claw her way into power to be safe. She's already safe. She's already powerful. She was friends with the princesses. Like, she isn't in danger. Who sits on the throne doesn't matter to her, because she can do whatever she wants. She's like a walking reminder to Jude and Terran of what they will never be just because of how they were born. And it's like, I think you could have done more with this. I also think it could have been interesting if we had more than just Jude's POV. If we could have had Vivi's POV just wants to see the twins from the outside. to see the family from like a different perspective.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like, I think that could be like super interesting.
But yeah, that's one of the bigger parts. There's the smaller things of keeping it cohesive with the fairy lore or the constraints, let's say, that would make the series a lot more interesting, I feel like. But the biggest structural thing is the whole Jude and Taryn relationship, because once you change that, I feel like a lot of other problems get solved quite easily. And a lot of other characters get more into perspective, like Nicasia, for example. From Jude's perspective, she's such a bitch, right? Yeah. Like, Jude just hates her. Nicasia abuses Jude in book 2. But she does seem to have a sort of, like, cat playing with a mouse relationship with Taryn, where she's like, I'm not gonna hurt Taryn, but it's fun to poke at her.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you.
And to see that out of Taryn's perspective would be so interesting, to see it from a different perspective. Because Nicasia also had the situation with Locke. Yeah. So for Taryn, that would also come into play as well. So I feel if that would change.
I think it also could be so much more fun if we just had more like fairy wordplay where they say something and then later you realize what it means. Like, it seems to mean something in the situation, but then later you're like, oh.
Like the bound together thing with the brittle.
Yeah, like the bound together. Or like when Nicasia in book 2 tells Jude somebody you trust has already betrayed you. And it's like, it's that one, like, those are good parts where it's like, God, I wish we had more of that.
Especially when it's like in the Bound Together one, if it's a play of words. It's not just a play of truth and lies, but if it's genuinely making a little riddle out of it. Those are my favorite parts. Because I'm not smart enough to come up with those. So whenever I see other people come up with it, I'm like, nice.
Yeah. Something that I also think is that there should really be more foreshadowing. I think it would have made a lot more sense if we had introduced, maybe even already, I think the first book is already pretty full, so not there, but in the second book, if we hadn't only introduced Grimson as a smith, but we had already seen one of his inventions go awry and somebody being cursed for it. I think that would have been more effective than him mentioning that there is a price if you destroy them. I think that could have been really effective. So, like, it didn't need to be, like... Obviously, you don't need to telegraph what's going to happen with the crown, but I think if something like that had happened before... people would be like, oh... Like, when Carden breaks the crown, you could already be like, oh, wait, I feel like this is not good.
I wonder, though, at which point in the second book you would like to do that, because... Otherwise, Jude wouldn't give Taryn those earrings if she knew that they would be potentially cursed to the point where if her sister decides to...
I think it could have been... I mean, this is just spitballing. I think one thing that could have been really cool if Baelkin had received one and Jude had tricked him into destroying it and that had killed him.
That would have,
And Jude could be like, I didn't kill him, but no one would believe her anyway. She could honestly say it, but it wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't matter anyways.
Be cool, but I also think it could have been fun if it had been like somebody at court or something, someone trying to kill Carden, but being like, like accidentally destroying something that Grimson had gifted him. And that backfiring or something. So I think that that could have also been fun.
Yeah, that could have been taken to point. But yeah, to give readers a little bit more of an oh no moment.
Yeah,
because like, it feels very in the face.
Told that like the earrings would have like taken all your beauty from you, but it's like, okay, but you're just telling us, you know? Especially, but then we wouldn't need to know why it happened the first time, but then we could contextualize it and be like, oh, this was like the brooch Grimson gave to Carden. Oh, that's why that happened. And then later, after the crown was here, like, oh, we could have seen this coming if we thought about it.
Yeah, no, that does make sense, in a way. I think one thing, but that's just like personal preference. But I would have liked the Carden squad to stay together a bit longer. They get established as like this rambunctious teen group in book 1, and they're like the it people, the it group of the Fairylands, because it's the prince, mean girls, it's a princess, it's a guy who's a very high standing, and I don't remember what Valerian's parents were doing, but they were also in the army or knights or something. And I thought it was a bit sad that Valerian, or not sad, but a bit of a missed chance that Valerian dies so soon, because I feel like he could have been a nice tool for Carden later, or a nice tool for others to manipulate. But this just turns Carden into this lonely guy in book 2, because Locke is kind of off doing his rebel things and getting drunk all the time with Carden, okay. But Nicasia is completely out of the picture because she's under the sea. And, Valerian is dead. So I would have liked them to stay together a bit longer. You could have also had Valerian not being very smart, but still managing to like kind of find out what Jude is doing to Carden in book 2, and then he gets killed off in book 2. Could also do that.
I think, I feel like on the one hand I get why they're gone, because like the cool kids squad is very school, and the second one doesn't have the school aspect anymore. It's like, oh shit got real. And I also think like Valerian's death is meaningful because he's a child of the gentry, and the fact that Jude kills him gives her more standing. Also because she can like throw it in Carden's face, and Carden can be like, oh no,
oh shit,
I'm about to get murdered. Okay. But I also feel like would have been cool to have Carden interact more with the other ones, and not just, especially because like he doesn't even like Locke. So
it's a weird friendship, right?
Why they hang out together. I feel like there should have been like more going on with them. I feel like it would have been hilarious, in like, of course, the bad sense for the characters, if like Locke had managed to manipulate Carden into like, it's not a double date because like Carden and Jude aren't dating, but if like Jude had to stand there while like Locke is there and Terrence also there and Nicasia's there, and that's like a
weird situation. Just play it off a little bit more off each other. I understand why Carden needs to be, why the tonal shift is there and everything, but I would have liked to see a bit more of a bigger downfall of that group, or more reason for them to not hang out as much. Because we still have the same motivation, the same like, oh, this is so high school motivations for Nicasia later to want to kill Jude, want to kill Carden.
I feel like Nicasia is so disappointing as a character. She's like, she's the fucking princess of the undersea. She should have been raised to have more her actions have more gravitas than just being a school bully, especially in the second one. It's just like, after meeting her mom especially, it's like, she should be more. I feel like she should aspire to be more because of the way her mother is. Like, her mother is extremely powerful and influential, and she loves her daughter, and it's like, but she doesn't feel like someone who would like coddle Nicasia in a way where Nicasia is just a spoiled baby. She clearly wants Nicasia to be able to hold power and wield it effectively. So Nicasia just being this hyper emotional mean girl is just
I mean,
a waste.
You have to think of the implications of somebody from the court of the Undersea sneaking into the palace of the High King
and almost
into his chambers.
Yeah.
And almost killing him. It's, if you think about it from that perspective, she F's up quite greatly and does not behave like somebody who ought to take over the court at some point at all. And in the third book, she's barely there, but when she's there, she's also...
Yeah, I don't know, this might just be me, but I feel like the weird, like... The fact that Jude and Nicasia are both so pressed about this love triangle is kind of ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
Because, like, I feel like I think it would work better if Nicasia was, like, she cared about Carden, but she wasn't in love with him anymore. Like, clearly she decided to be with Locke afterward. Like,
yeah.
I think it would have been reasonable for her to be like, yeah, I loved him, but I don't love him like that anymore, but I still care. And I don't trust Jude with him. There's something going on.
Yeah.
But, like, this petty jealousy feels so misplaced. It's like, yeah, it fits into, like, teenagers interacting, but it doesn't fit into a story that has changed to be about politics of a pretty high caliber. It's like, really? We're doing this? It feels so childish next to every other problem. Like, it's so irrelevant, but it still has to be there. It's just, why are we doing this?
It's, yeah, so the whole, like, interactions and friends of, like, Carden and the court definitely also change it. Maybe have less characters from other books and have more time for the characters inside the book to develop. But I also feel like that is something that would nearly get fixed by, you know, the rewrite that you presented.
I'm glad you also, like, you agree with me, because I was like, am I just like being extremely self-indulgent? Is this just my taste?
No, I do agree. Because I am... I really dislike putting characters into a situation that could be great but not using them.
Yeah.
And then, but also kind of using them, you know, it's not just like, oh my god, look at this cool guy, and then we never see them, but it's more in a way of, oh, look at this person, they're really cool, but I'm not gonna really show you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna, but you're still gonna have to see this character for quite a while. That annoys me.
Yeah.
Or if a character is clearly kept, you know, they're unthawing. No, they're thawing in the fridge.
Yeah.
But we're not gonna cook them now. We're gonna cook them later. But you know they're thawing, and you're like, oh.
Yeah. It's unfortunate.
So that's why I completely agree with that.
Yeah, it's like I don't like Taryn in the books. I think she's mostly kind of annoying and often feels like I have to do extra work to try to understand why she might do something. Which I don't think should be the case for someone who has this big of an influence on the plot with the things she does. But I want to like her. I feel like she has so much potential, which is sadly wasted.
Like the third book.
Yeah.
But I think concerning my thoughts on the series are finished. I know that we probably will never talk about the extended books because you will not read them.
No, I hate sequels. I am a hater. I don't enjoy them.
I could give a short thought on I still haven't read the one with the short stories, but I did read The Stolen Heir. I will say, if you like the trilogy, you will probably like Stolen Heir as well. The characters at some point warmed up to me, but I felt like she had a similar pacing problem that she shows in book 2 and book 3. It's the same in Stolen Heir, and it feels like there should have been a bit more editing in that part. If you enjoy troubled teenagers, then Stolen Heir is definitely something for you, because we just continue with Oak and Soren. on there. There is some stuff that, now that I've reread the trilogy, makes me go, wait, is that even possible with the lore? Or it's like it's a stretch. Let's just say that it feels like a bit of a stretch to just include that little random tidbit in there. But yeah, I think if you enjoyed these, you'll definitely, and you're into sequels, you'll definitely enjoy The Stolen Heir.
And if you like Oak, I guess.
Well, he's not as much. I feel like Oak and Surin are new characters in every way. I did not really recognize the Surin of Stolen Heir in Queen of Nothing. And the only part that Oak carries over into the Stolen Heir is that he's a little shit, but a lovely little shit. So that's, you don't need that much attachment to these characters. That's it. And also in Stolen Heir, you don't really see Carden or Jude. You do know what they're doing, but they're not really players in the game. But Madog is in there. So if you like Madog, then you should read Stolen Heir. Alright. I guess that's it. Do you have any more last thoughts?
No, I don't. I think we've talked about this pretty
we vented.
Yeah. I mean, we've already talked a lot about both Cruel Prince and Wicked King. And, like, although there's a lot to complain about with Queen of Nothing, there's not that much to say because, like, yeah, the problems are pretty obvious, I feel like. But they're also, like, it's just like, yeah, obviously it was rushed. Like, I don't know what else to say. It's like, it's just not that good.
There's nothing really more to say to this. Yeah, well, that being said, I'm happy we actually did the whole series of books.
Yeah, look at us finishing something.
Oh my god. And yeah, I guess we'll get back to you with the next book at some point. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next one, or you'll see us as ducks. Bye.
Goodbye.